Anyway, welcome to Buildup. We're almost through. This is our penultimate lecture. Next week is the last one. And today, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to talk about building your real estate team. And then after that, we're going to hear from Aaron. He's going to talk about reading building plans. And, many of you know how to read building plans, but maybe not as well as Aaron does. And I know Dustin's on the call, and every time I look at his plans, I always need a few extra explanations. I'm not that strong on that side of things, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what Aaron has to say in a little bit of time. I'm going to share my screen with you. First, I want to make sure I'm sharing it. Yeah, this is the one. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about building a team, and not everybody agrees with me that this is really important. And what I mean by that is people often think of their team not really as a team, but just as transactions. All right. So you might have one mortgage broker who does this transaction, one architect or architectural technologist who does that this project. But I don't believe in that. I believe in forming a team of people who are loyal to you, and you are loyal to them, and you stay with them for many, many years. And I think it has a lot of advantages. Anyway, this is lecture number 8 in Buildup. It's about your real estate team. And then, as I said, we're going to hear from Aaron about building plans. I'm going to just get out of this for a second. I'm going to put this in the chat box for everybody. I wrote something called Your Real Estate Team and Simplified Deal Flow. And it'll be in the chat box. And Aaron, you'll keep your eye on the chat box for me while I'm talking. Okay. If there's any questions that people have, please put them in the chat box, and then Aaron will remind me that there's some questions. And I like questions, and I know Aaron does too. It makes it a little bit more of a conversation. So I'll go back to sharing. So I put in the chat box your real estate team and simplified deal flow, which will summarize some of the things that I'm going to talk about here today. And I thought I'd start with a plan that, Dustin, can you unmute yourself for a second? Are you there, brother?
Yep.
All right. Do you want to turn on your camera?
Yeah, my camera's turned on.
Okay, there you go. I can see you now. So do you recognize this plan on the screen here?
Oh, yeah. This is from your secondary dwelling there, the coach house.
Exactly, and it's about to go into the ground finally. So,
oh my God,
Denise and Stuart are helping me with this. Denise, this is what the RRSP mortgage is for, that Stuart and Terry are helping with. And this is a small building of about 920 or 930 square feet. It is an existing detached garage in the backyard of a property which has a duplex on it. So right now it has a back-to-back condition. So it has a 5-bedroom house here, back-to-back it has a 2-bedroom house, and in the back it has a detached garage that we're converting into a coach house. And what Dustin, who is an architectural technologist, and I really trust and like him, what we have done is, this is the existing building here. If you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor moving around there, Dustin?
Yep.
All right, thank you. So what you have here is the original building, which will be really totally rebuilt. Okay, so it's a renovation, because it's a lot easier to get a permit for a renovation than for a new build. But what you're going to end up with is, you come in here, the main door, here's the great room with the small kitchen here, dining area, and there's an island here, living area, work area here. And then you go to the right over here, and you've got a door, and this becomes a 1-bedroom with its own bathroom and its closet here. So this little building here will be basically a 1-bedroom apartment. Over here, we have a new part of the building, and that is a microsuite. You guys all know what microsuites are. They're self-contained. units. They can be as small as 145 square feet, but most of the ones I build are 200 to 300. Some of them are 400 square feet. That's quite big for a micro suite, but certainly 200 to 300. UBC has built them as small as 145 square feet. They have them as small as 145 square feet in Shanghai, but I don't generally go that small. So this one here, I don't remember exactly how big it is. Dustin, do you remember how big that is?
Looks like 15-ish by 8 and 5, so about another 14. It's almost 15 by 15.
Yeah, I think it's
You know.
about 230 square feet. That's my recollection too. So you'll notice though that what's really neat about the plan that Dustin worked on with me is that it has its own means of ingress and egress to the outside. You can see this is a door to the outside here, and it has a connecting door as well. Interestingly enough, by the time we finish with this construction, what we're going to end up with is we have one 2-bedroom apartment, a coach house in the backyard to rent, or we have a 1-bedroom apartment to rent and a micro suite separately, or they could be put on Airbnb or short-term rental. I mean, there's so many different versions of this, and we don't have to do anything. So if you wanted to rent it as a 2-bedroom Airbnb, you could, or you could put the micro suite on Airbnb and rent this long-term, or vice versa. I mean, you sort of see their permutations and combinations that are possible. And the only change really that I made to Dustin's design, and he's a very good designer, was this door originally was facing in this direction, and I didn't really like the look of having 2 front doors, if you will, facing the street. So I turned one at 90 degrees. And the only other thing, Dustin, since you and I last talked about it, that we've done is we have a little part of the garden here that really is landlocked because there's a fence back here. We put a door here so we can have a little private garden as well. So those are the only 2 changes. So having an architect or architectural technologist like Dustin that you like and trust, who knows you, who understands what you're trying to do, who understands some of the animation ideas that we're talking about, is really important. And I want to stress for everybody on this call that many architects are concerned about one thing, and that is pretty. They want their buildings to be pretty. Well, I want the buildings to be pretty too, but I also want them to have a functional program that leads to a return on investment for everybody, not just for me as the owner, but also the tenants, the guests, the passersby, the city, the town. I want everybody to benefit. And that often, those ideas will often come from you rather than the architect. And that's quite frustrating for some of the people on this call and people who will watch this on replay. All right. So this is a very important hire. And once you find somebody that you like and trust and enjoy working with, like I do with Dustin, you kind of stick with him if he'll stick with you. I don't have to tell you how important a good attorney is. There are, at least in my experience, 2 types of attorneys that you can hire as part of your team: a deal-making lawyer or a deal-breaking lawyer. And I just wanted to talk for a moment, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'm just going to wave my hands around. I'm going to talk about a deal-making attorney. An older lady by the name of Lois Bidgood sold her 70-acre property in Canada to a developer by the name of Steenbakers for $1.7 million, 10% down, and a 90% seller take back or vendor take back mortgage. The $170,000 that Lois got from Mr. Steenbakers was not even enough to pay her back property taxes, and she had some other costs on the land that she had to pay. And then, of course, she faced a capital gains tax because she probably, the Bidgoods had probably bought that property 120, 150 years ago for, a few $100s. And then, of course, Mr. Steenbakers defaulted on his seller take-back mortgage. So she was in real trouble when she asked me. I wasn't coaching her then, but when she asked me for some help. And I said to Mrs. Bidgood, your mortgage back, which was the first mortgage on the land, did it have in it foreclosure powers, or was it just power of sale? She said, I don't know, but my lawyer will know. Fortunately, her lawyer was a man by the name of Terry Denison. Terry Denison is a smart lawyer. And what he had done is he had put in both foreclosure provisions and power of sale provisions. And I have talked to Canadian lawyers who do not know that foreclosure, which is a more common thing in the United States, is also a legal process in Canada. When I hear that, I get mad. I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a lowly engineer. But I get mad because I'll say to them, how did you get your law degree? Was it, one of those mail order degrees from overseas that you pay $500? Because it's perfectly legal. And Terry, of course, knew that. And the difference between power of sale and foreclosure is huge. So Denise, let's say you lend me some money to do a project through your RRSP lending, and I default. I would hope that to protect you, that you would have in your agreement, your second mortgage or first mortgage agreement, both power of sale provisions and foreclosure. Foreclosure means that you can apply to a court, and the court will then hear your arguments, and then they can assign title back to you. Under a power of sale, which is more common in Canada, what you have to do is you have to hire a realtor. You have to hire a realtor. It has to go on MLS, and you have to say power of sale. That brings out all the vultures across Canada and from around the world who know that this property is in trouble. It is the worst time to sell a property because you're saying basically, I'm in trouble, help me out, I'm broke. So don't do that. So I said to Lois, we're going to foreclose. And that's what we did. We applied to the courts and foreclosed on the property. She got the property back. And then what we did was we sold it to Minto for $4.5 million in cash. So she went from a $1.7 million transaction, 10% down and 90% on the Never Never plan, to $4.5 million in cash from Minto. But wait, it gets better. We also noticed that there was a road that had bisected the property, so some of the property was naturally severed. We didn't sell Minto that. We waited another 2, 3, 4 years, I don't remember how long, and then we sold that for another $3 million. So Lois ended up with, when we had some other things that we did with it, she ended up with $8 million, but all because Terry Denison put in foreclosure. Because listen to what would happen under power of sale. Under power of sale, the lender could have approached me. I could have put it on MLS, which I would have done, and I would have sold it to Minto anyway for $4.5 million, probably for the whole thing. And guess who gets anything over the $1.7 million? Not Lois, but Steenbakers, who was hiding in Florida. Do you understand? So power of sale is not as good a remedy, in my opinion. All right, so there you go. All right, let's go back here. So having a good lawyer really makes a difference, and Terry certainly represents that. In fact, here's another example. Okay, this one is a Steve Sheppard story. Many of you know Steve Sheppard. He has been my personal attorney, real estate attorney for, I think, 17 years now. I knew him when he's in his 20s. He's now in his 40s. Even Steve is getting older. And this was a great example, again, of having a really good lawyer on your team. And when you get a really good architect or lawyer on your team, keep them, right? Be good to them, and they'll be good to you. So here's an example. This is a little harder to understand, I think. Anyway, a young man, I represented him, Dan McCue, who's a mechanic, bought this piece of property, which was about, I think, 1.6 acres. It's a lot in Ottawa off of Mitch Owens. If you know Mitch Owens, it's quite a major thoroughfare. And when I looked at the listing, I don't know if you can see it on the screen here, but this is the lot. And you notice that it has no connection to the road. Here's the road up here. That's Mitch Owens here. And here is Dan's lot. So when I looked at this listing on MLS, all right, I called up the realtor who was selling it. And I said to her, I said, how do people access this property? And she said, well, what do you mean? How do they access this property? Well, I said, do they all have helicopters? And she said, what are you talking about? I said, well, this has no legal access to a road. So you have to helicopter in, otherwise you're trespassing. She had not looked at title, and realtors should look at title. So she said, well, there's a driveway, and you can see this is the driveway here. So you can see this long skinny piece, that's the driveway that connects to Mitch Owens. But it wasn't owned by the people who were selling this lot. It was owned by somebody else. when I asked Steve Sheppard to check the title, which he did, we found out that this was owned by somebody last heard of in 1905. That's quite a long time ago. So in theory, or at least in all likelihood, there's no chance that this individual is still around. So what Steve did was he used something called title insurance. And a competent lawyer will always recommend that you should have title insurance, whether it's a commercial transaction or residential. And title insurance will guarantee and warrant against title defects, which clearly this lot had. So number one, me representing Dan, I went back to the sellers and we gave them a big time haircut. Jordan, you know what I mean when I say haircut? Yeah. They were asking about $450,000 for this property. We got it down to $405. We took off $45,000 because of this title defect, because my client Dan was going to assume that. And we got all kinds of chattels. We got their tractor, their lawn tractors. We got their snowplow. We did pretty well for Dan. I only represented Dan, obviously not the seller. And then what Steve did over the next year was he applied to the court to have this parcel, put into Dan's name. And we had to circulate the neighbors. And all the neighbors agreed, provided that Dan would maintain it and he would give them access, which he did. In other words, our neighbors had easements over it. But here's the other cool thing. At the same time, I'll stop sharing again just for a minute. At the same time that we were, going through this process, the city of Ottawa was writing the coach house bylaw. And one of the things I was doing, I was working with the city to write that bylaw. And the city wasn't going to allow coach houses in the rural areas because they're on well and septic. And I said, that's not acceptable. And so we came to a compromise. The compromise was, as long as your parcel of land in a rural area was 2 acres or more, you could build a coach house. All right. And I knew that this was only 1.6 acres, so it would not allow Dan to build a coach house. However, once title insurance, and by the way, title insurance paid all of Steve's legal fees. This did not come from Dan. Once title insurance had successfully applied to the courts and this piece of property was put in Dan's name, his lot now was 2.2 acres, meaning he could now build a coach house. All right. So having a good realtor, in this case me, or a good coach, and having a good lawyer really can make a big difference to your success. All right, let's keep going. I always ask my students, this is going back a long time, at least 30 years, but what's the number one thing in life? And many of my students, when I was teaching at the university, they would obviously answer love. I mean, they were all 21, 22, 23 years of age. And I would say, no, it's trust. And they go, oh, no, that's boring. And then I asked them, have you ever had your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your partner, sort of fool around behind your back? What was that relationship like? And by the time that they're 21, 22, 23, many of them have had that experience, and they go, oh, that really sucked, to find out your girlfriend or your boyfriend is fooling around behind your back. So I said, really, love isn't going to exist very long, at least in my experience, unless you have trust. And that is true in your supply chain. It's true about building your team. You have to really like the people you work with, and you have to trust them, and vice versa. You have to have a great surveyor. You'd be amazed at how many times surveyors have bailed me out of problems, and great engineers. I mean, not just architects and lawyers and others. You need these people. And once you find a surveyor who really works hard for you, he or she, they're timely and they're cost effective, and they know how to make things happen. And I just pulled this one out of one of my current coaching assignments with Alex Long. He is building something called Get Space Storage in Rockland. So Aaron, you should pay attention here. I think you were just texting. This is a site that Alex owns in Rockland, and it's about 13 acres. And the engineering firm that Alex is working with, is fantastic. They know how to service these lands, how to work with stormwater, all the things that you want. But they also understand how to make this particular site better in terms of its return on investment for Alex. And I'll show you a couple of little things. So one of the things that Alex is doing on this property is he's going to build mini storage buildings, which you can see here. These are kind of vertical. This is the main driveway accessing the property, which is horizontal on the screen. So these are the storage buildings, and there'll be mini storage buildings like you see everywhere. You roll up the garage door, put your stuff in, put a lock on it. But what we also did was Alex is going to build workshops, and they're going to face the main driveway. And so if you had a workshop facing the main driveway, somebody visiting you would be able to park here, enter your workshop, and buy whatever it is that you're selling, handmade soaps, acoustic guitars. I mean, who knows what else you could sell, furniture, whatever it might be. So the other thing about it is when these workshop buildings face the driveway like this, they also eliminate a lot of the needed fencing and security. So the buildings, in fact, replace a lot of the fencing. They're more valuable when they face a road. A workshop is more valuable when it has sort of frontage. And it reduces the amount of fencing. So your engineers and your surveyors, they can really help you. They have so much experience. They can say, have you ever thought of doing this? So listen to these people. But also, because you're on the Buildup course and you're getting educated, if they miss some of these ideas, you have to question it, right? So you can't just take everything you get from your engineer and surveyor without a few questions. Ask questions, all right? I put this in just for fun. How valuable are great pictures of the work that we do, on housing, on commercial projects, whatever? How many times have you seen things for sale or for lease where the pictures are really terrible? I just pulled these off the internet. These are really terrible pictures of the inside of houses. I bought a house that was in this sort of condition, by the way. I bought it for cheap, mind you. And this is the actual house that I bought from a hoarder. And I think I might have shown these pictures before. But before I allow any tenants into any of my buildings, all right, before they put their crappy furniture in, some of them will have crappy furniture, I take really good pictures. In this case, we had really good furniture because this happens to be mine. But you can see the quality of the image. That will get you, I mean, these are pictures you'll have maybe for decades, and they pay huge dividends. I think I may have talked on this course, I don't remember, about one of my clients, Linda Garrett, who's in the, she supplies blinds, and she says over and over and over again to developers, let me put blinds throughout your building. Like you're building a 6-plex, 10-plex, Aaron, do you have blinds or do you let your tenants put blinds on?
We will have blinds, yes.
Yeah, because I hate buildings where you have, blinds like you see on the right-hand side of the screen and the left-hand side, somebody puts up a cannabis blind, somebody puts up a sheet. I mean, imagine you've spent millions of dollars on a building and the image, the curb appeal just goes downhill. You'll attract tenants that are the wrong tenants if you don't do that. So again, this is just another picture of that townhouse that I bought. We use California shutters in a lot of our buildings. They're fantastic. They last a long time. They don't discolor in the sun, and and they look nice, right? And you see from the street, it really looks good. I'm going to get out of this again. I'll put this in the chat box. This is something I think you've already may have seen it, some of you, but you need to have a development manager when you're doing a project. And most people think that a development manager, and I'll put it in the chat box if you want to get the link, you can. They think that a development manager is the same as a project manager, but that is not accurate. A development manager is there from the moment that the idea is formed, and he or she knows something about animation, highest and best use, zoning, all these things. And then the development manager can help you put the team together. He can help you, or she can help you with your planning requirements, liaising with the municipality, can help you run the schedule. The schedule is what the project manager really does. Development manager is the whole package: financing, budgeting, spreadsheets, right? All marketing and leasing. Development manager is a much bigger role. I do that for some of my clients, and I like doing it. I don't take on many projects because I'm getting a little too old, but I like doing it. And so there, I put a picture of me in there. And you need really good planners these days. I mean, there's a few places. Michael has that place we've talked about before on Lasqueti Island. He calls it Safe Island, where you don't need a building permit. But pretty much everywhere else, other than Houston and Lasqueti, Houston doesn't have any zoning rules, but pretty much everywhere else you go, they have more zoning rules and planning rules than a Porcupine has quills. So you need a good planner. I often use Paul Robinson. He's a local Ottawa planner, but you need to find that. And when you find somebody like that, the other one I use is a young woman by the name of Jasmine Paoloni at P2 or P Squared. You want a planner who's on your side. Many planners are intimidated by cities, provinces, states, counties, townships. They are jaded, and they have so many projects with the state or the county or the city that they often are working for the state or the city because they don't want to put the city offside. And as a result, they may not be representing you as well as they should. So you need to find a fearless planner. And both Paul and Jasmine, who I work closely with, are fearless. I put on here, I think I've shown you this project before. This is the new vet clinic that I'm the development manager of. And we ran into a huge problem on the planning side that was completely unanticipated. It blew up the schedule. We have a schedule, you might as well have written that on a tissue paper and flushed it down the toilet. What happened was the province of Ontario unilaterally changed the urban boundary. So this was a rural property where this building, which is a vet clinic of 5,400 square feet designed by P2, was going to be built here right next to an existing house. Zoning is good, everything is good. But when they changed the province unilaterally earlier this year, changed the official plan boundary to move it out, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but was terrible for this project, $240,000 of Dr. Olender's money and 2.5 years of work by yours truly and Paul and the rest of the team went down the toilet. And the reason for that is the city of Ottawa said, we are going to have to redo everything. Instead of having rural standard, we had to redo all of our studies according to urban conditions. Imagine that, 2.5 years. So I called a meeting with the top people in the planning department, and I said, guess what? We're not doing that. What's going to happen is Dr. Olender's existing lease, because he's renting now, is coming due, and the land is going to be redeveloped. Dr. Olender and 15,000 clients, all of them owning animals, are going to be out on their ear, and the city's going to be responsible for at least $10 to $12 million in damages. That's what's going to happen here, because Dr. Olender is not spending another 2.5 years and another $240,000 in studies. And they said, well, our hands are tied. I said, no, they're not. No, they're not. Can you give me a second, Aaron? I've got two my cleaning ladies here, and they're having a wild old time, but I can't hear myself think. So give me a second. Hey, girls, where are you? Yeah, I'm just doing a little coaching there. Okay, no worries. Sorry about that, you guys. They're wonderful people, but they like to chat. So anyway, so I said, that's not what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to make an official plan amendment of the official plan amendment of the official plan amendment, and the city is going to do that, not Dr. Olender, and you're going to do it at your cost, and you're going to redesignate this one piece of land back to rural, and you're going to do it by June 30th at your cost. Or else. And guess what? Aaron, what do you think happened?
They did it.
They agreed. So you want to have a good development manager, and you want to have a good lawyer, and sometimes you want to have a good litigation lawyer. I got a good litigation lawyer. Fortunately, in this case, the city is doing the right thing. All right. I hate it, but this is another one of my stories. You definitely want to have a good realtor that you can work with. When you're buying stuff, you've heard me say it a million times. When you make money, and it'll say when you buy, not when you sell. So buy smart. So in the last big recession, and I think we're heading into a recession, in the last big recession, Jay Curry, who's one of the founders of the Barley Mow, that's a series of pubs in Ottawa, wanted to buy a really, really nice executive home worth a couple of $1 million at least back then. That was, I think, 2009. It was a recession. And so he asked me if I'd help him out. And I said, sure. So we found this beautiful home, and it was being sold by a contractor. And Dustin, are you asleep? Are you listening? Am I keeping your attention here?
I apologize. I was away for training. We have 2 new employees starting today. I have bombarded with, anyway, there's a lot of things happening, but all for the future good.
All right. Well, anyway, you know what? It's a good thing everybody you're not in the classroom with me, because I could be a miserable SOB.
Okay.
Anyway, so I woke him up. Sorry, guys. I didn't mean that, Dustin. So anyway,
I've already heard this spiel 3 times, this version of this story. So
okay. Oh, you're killing me now. I apologize.
all good. It's all good.
But anyway, it's a demonstration of what a realtor can do for you.
I get it.
So Jay Curry wanted to buy this this beautiful house, and I put in an offer. He asked me to put in an offer of $825,000, and they were asking $2 million for it. And it was a very tough recession. We haven't quite got there yet in 2023, but maybe in 2024, it's possible we could get there. So anyway, we haggled a little bit, and finally, the contractor who owned this house agreed to sell it for, I think, $855 or something like it. It was ridiculous. It was a beautiful, beautiful house. And I asked the construction or the contractor, I said, do you have a realtor that you would like to use? Because I'm not representing you. I only represent Jay. He said, I don't need a realtor. I said, oh, okay. But you know, I only represent Jay. And you've signed a confirmation of cooperation and representation agreement, which means I don't represent you. And he said, yeah, I get that. I don't need a realtor. I said, well, do you have a lawyer? Can we send this agreement to your lawyer so he or she can review it and give you advice? Oh, I don't want to pay a lawyer. I said, well, I really think you should. So I sent him an email reminding him that I don't represent him, that he'd signed the confirmation of cooperation and representation agreement, and just checking the time, that my recommendation was either hire a realtor or get his lawyer to review this agreement. And then he wrote me back basically saying, F you. Anyway, he signed the agreement. About 2 weeks before closing, I get a call from his lawyer saying, well, we're not closing. I said, what do you mean you're not closing? He said, Bruce, you included $150,000 worth of chattels in this. He had a beautiful home theater system. He had a sound system like from Finland or Norway, which was worth at least 50 grand. The snowplow, everything, the seller thought that all those chattels were excluded from the transaction, and you told them they were included. I said, oh, no. The agreement says they're included, not excluded. And I said, before you decline to close, let me send you the emails that I sent him in his response to me. So basically, we put them in a box, and they were not able to do anything but close. And it's too bad for the seller. I mean, he lost at least $150,000 worth of chattels, and he sold his house for less than half of the value at the time. Today, that house that Jay owns is probably worth $3 or $3.5 million. So having a realtor who represents you, who actually knows what he or she is doing, can help you. I think many of you know Sean McCormick. He has been my go-to guy for at least 14 or 15 years. Again, if you can find a mortgage broker that you like and trust, he or she, they will work hard for you. They will never give up on a deal. If you go to a mortgage broker and then you go to 2 other mortgage brokers, so you've got 3 working against each other, they're going to trip all over each other. The lenders are going to see this deal from mortgage broker A, B, and C. They're going to say, what the hell is going on here? I don't know what's going on. You need to find somebody who will be what I call your virtual CFO in real estate. You have to find somebody who will not quit on you, who will work the phones, will work the internet until they find a solution. That is worth a lot. A virtual CFO, not necessarily Sean McCormick. There's others out there that are just as good or maybe better. Now, one thing that I did help Sean with Denise, listen up here. I did help him with his fund. He has his own fund called Castlebay Alliance, and I named it. The way I name things is I go on a map of the United Kingdom and I just steal names from Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England, what have you. And the reason I do that is I want names that are easy to spell and say. So that was my big contribution there. You want to find some lenders that you know and like. This is young Amelia Campbell in Belleville. I think Dale has met her, and some of the other people on the call probably have met her. She's a young person. You can see that here with her daughter. She is a fantastic banker. And she has bailed me out on this project that I've been working on for 2.5 years in Belleville. So again, if you have good relations with lenders that you know and trust, and they know and trust you, it can be a huge help. You need a bookkeeper. Believe it or not, I did my own bookkeeping for a while after I left the Senators. That was a mistake. I will never repeat that mistake. Having a bookkeeper like Jill, in this case, Jill Nelson, is really, really, really worthwhile. She got me a huge HST refund because for most of you, I think by now you know that HST, if you're a business owner, is your friend, right? Because if you have a business, every time you take a client out for lunch and you pay a little bit of HST, that becomes an ITC, an input tax credit, and you get it back. HST is a profit center for businesses, and Jill certainly understands that. And she got me at least $40,000 or $50,000 back on one of the projects I was working on. You want to have a great appraiser. This again is my building in Belleville, and I had an appraisal at 4.2 million. And Michael, if you're still on the line here, I have to give Michael a big round of applause here. He said, Bruce, get another appraisal, get a second opinion. So I did. And what I like about Rebecca is she listens. She's reasonable. She doesn't always do what I tell her to do, but she will at least listen. And so the appraisal went from up to 5 million from 4.2 million. That's a big difference in terms of financing and refinancing. So find an appraiser that you like and trust and who listens, right? I don't have to tell people on the call. Woody's on the call here. He's an expert in marketing branding, but you really want your brand and your buildings to be, reflect the quality of the work that you do. It is the last 3% of the money that you spend, or maybe it's the last 5 or 6% of the money you spend, that influences appraisers, tenants, passersby, cities, towns. They don't know that there's huge structural investments, and all kinds of other cool things that you put into the building, neat technology that works great, right? You want to make sure that your marketing, your branding is good, that you have lots of strong social. I just put up my own social. I've got my own website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube. I'm an author on Amazon. I've got a Twitter. I've got Facebook. I've got a Facebook group. I'm on Instagram, and I've got a Tumblr blog as well. Those are my social. For you, especially for the younger people, and I was thinking about you, Jordan, actually this morning. For you, I think it'd be very important for you to do some TikTok videos. You're a young person, good looking. This will really help you with your property management company.
I think it's important for everybody to utilize TikTok. And I also heard that LinkedIn is becoming a major place for marketing just because of the higher level of prospects on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And I wish I could say that I've done some TikTok videos, but I'm planning to do some for what I do. So I really like the idea of your brand is not just having nice marketing and great social. It's also making sure your buildings are pretty and that they reflect the quality on the outside. For those of you who know that I like naming things, I've named a lot of buildings, I've named roads, I've named all kinds of things, businesses, whatever. And I'm gonna get out of this so I can put it into the so I can put it in the chat box. If you want to look it up, naming and taglines are really important. And think about Google. I mean, what a great name that is. But the original name for Google was Google. Google is a mathematical term meaning very, very large number, but somebody simplified it. Facebook wasn't Facebook to begin with. It was called the Facebook, and then they dropped the word the. Naming is important, all right? And you should have a tagline. My brand today is Prof. Bruce, and my tagline is making impossible possible. Terrace Investments, excuse me, Terrace Investments Limited, which was the original parent company of the Ottawa Senators, when it was more of a development company, less of an entertainment and hockey company. It was Terrace Investments Limited, or Terrace Properties. Great space for great people. That's a little dated now, but that's what we used back in the 80s and the 90s. Tagline should be memorable, short, have more than one meaning maybe, be authentic, and be funny. And here are just some of the names that I've come up with over the years: the Palladium, Robertson Mews, Briarbrook, Burning Rock, the Nobbin Lake, Malorn Center, Royal Bank Pavilion, Castlebay Alliance, which is what I named Sean's fund. And more recently, we renamed our building in Belleville the Burroughs Building. Burroughs was the original family that built this building 150 years ago, and we went back to using that name. It's a beautiful name, the Burroughs Building. And a burrow, as you know, is a place where small animals can go and be protected. So naming is very important. You recognize this guy? Yeah. So probably the toughest, or one of the toughest things to recommend to anybody is, hey, do you know a renovator I can call, a trade, a subtrade, a handyman, or a contractor, or a home builder? Those are tough, tough, tough recommendations. So I'm not going to do that. Aaron is. So I put you in the soup, brother.
Thank you.
Something else that you want to put on your team is technology is an important part of what we do, whether it's commercial, industrial, residential, and in many of our buildings, we have tech packages. So we put in technology where you've got internet, you've got all these different streaming services, you've got Nest thermostats, which you can control from your smartphone. We gave up on keys. I mean, you know, if you have, even if you only have 10, units, you've got a lot of keys to look after, right? So it's better to have, keys, number locks that you can reprogram, right? So that's what we do. So technology packages are really important. And in my case, I have a guy, his name's Abe DeHaby, who runs our computers, and he runs all of our technology, because it's too difficult for me. I can't put a Google Nest system together myself for the life of me. And I can't make half of the stuff work. And he does that. And it's very important to the tenants, obviously, and to you. Here's another toughie. For most of us, in my opinion, property management is a core competency. And at least when you have a small portfolio, you're probably going to want to do it yourselves, just so you can learn the business. There are a lot of things that you have to be careful about when you're hiring a property manager. But as your portfolio grows, it becomes very difficult to do it on your own unless you have patience and time. I have patience now, but I don't have time. So property management is very important to me. And I've got a couple other things. I think I gave these to you yesterday before I was puking and had to leave the call, Jordan, but I'll put it in the chat box again for everybody. And these are a couple of things that I think you might want to read about proper property management. And I want you to read them even if you have a property manager, because I want you to make sure that your property manager is running your buildings properly. And if you're doing it, even more important, I want you to read it. All right. So I put in the chat box, proper property management, portfolio management, and different revenue streams that are available. And then proper property management forms in the second one. You want property managers who do more than just call the plumber when the toilet is blocked. You want somebody who actually can help you if he or she is seeing something. Oh, gee, we could add a micro suite here and make more money. We could add a basement apartment to this building and make some more money for you. You want property managers who are working for you and with you to make sure your buildings reach their fullest potential. You want them to keep good tenants happy. You don't want any deferred maintenance. One of my clients bought a beautiful 24-unit building in Alexandria for almost nothing because the property manager, there was a little leak in the roof in the spring, and my client and I went through it, and we said to the property manager, you got to fix that leak. He didn't do anything. And by the fall, there was mold throughout the building, and the price for that building just dropped by probably half. So you want to have, your property manager is your antenna, right? You don't want any deferred maintenance, and you want happy tenants. A lot of property managers, you've heard me say this before, when the phone rings, they go, damn, another call, right? Tenants pay the bills. Tenants are your clients. You should treat them that way. And one other thing that property managers can do is they can steal from you. I put up here a company I used to run called Blue Heron Storage. We had a bunch of mini storage buildings. You can see them here on the screen. And we had a high ranch bungalow. The manager lived upstairs, and we had another apartment with a walkout condition in the basement that we rented out. And this business was really good. It was always about 92, 94% rented. But over time, I noticed it was going down to, 90 and then 88. It finally got down to close to 80%. And I went on site and I counted how many of these sheds, you can see them here, these are individual sheds or garages, basically, how many of them had padlocks on them. Virtually all of them did. But the property manager was reporting, that, 82% of them were leased and 18% were not. Well, what he was doing was he had signed some leases for the other 18% that were paid in cash. And guess who got the cash? So after I counted the locks, I went into the house that you see on the screen here, and I fired him. And I said, you're out of here in 10 minutes. You're gone. And so I put some, obviously better procedures in place to prevent that. But your property manager can steal from you. So you want to have somebody that you like and trust. And one of the things I've never done is I've never allowed any of the property managers to collect the money. Money would come to me as the landlord or the owner, and then I would pay the property manager whatever's necessary for deferred maintenance or to repair and maintain the buildings, and of course the property manager's fee. I like this one. And again, apologize if some of you have heard this story before, but it's worthwhile. We're talking the real estate team. You want to have, as I said earlier, a great appraiser. And Rebecca Simon and her father, Mike Simon, are good appraisers. And there's many others out there, but there's some bad ones too. This is Alex Long again. You can see him here. He's a young man. And he owns, on the right-hand side, he owns a beautiful executive home here on 2 acres of land. And then he built a 1,600 square foot shop in the back. And you can see, here's the picture of the shop. I don't have a picture of the house. I don't know. I couldn't find it. But anyway, here's the 1,600 square foot workshop he built. And then there's his house. And he runs a company, very successful company called All Around Fencing. So I said, this is great. How did you pay for this, Alex? He said, well, it was all cash. And I said, okay, do you want to pull some money out of your primary residence and your new workshop so you could buy more real estate? He owns a lot of real estate now. He said, yeah, let's do it. So he hired an appraiser, and I briefed the appraiser. We did it together. We did what's called a comparative market analysis. Realtors like me are allowed to do CMAs, comparative market analysis, but we're not allowed to do appraisals. And so we did that, and we showed the cost of this and the value of this, which is a little different from the cost, and the two buildings together. We had a number in mind. So we sent that to the appraiser. And then on the day that the appraiser got there, I was there with Alex. The appraiser shows up at the door to do the appraisal, and the appraiser says, oh, no, I'm not allowed to look at any outbuildings. I can't include any outbuildings at all in the value. I said, well, did you look at our spreadsheet and our comparative market analysis and all the other stuff that we gave you? Oh yeah, I glanced at it, but yeah, I'm just going to walk through the building. So I said, could you give Alex and me a couple of minutes? So I said, Alex, we're going to use Mr. Trump's famous 2 words when he was on The Apprentice. You're fired. So we fired the guy right there. We said, you're not getting in the house. That's it. If we owe you any money, let us know, but you're not doing the appraisal. So you have to, be loyal to the people that you hope are loyal to you. But every once in a while, you have to insist on adequate performance, and every once in a while, you do have to fire somebody. And we fired that guy, and we got another appraiser who did a great job, right? And understood the value of having a workshop. The idea of live work condition, I don't have to tell you guys at this stage in the course that it is fantastic. So he got a very good appraisal the second time. So again, Michael, you're right. Get multiple appraisals, right? 2 or 3. I think in Michael's case, he might probably even had 1 property he got 4 appraisals on. But it costs money, but it's worth doing, because that is the difference. They're the gatekeepers. Okay. And I sent this to Woody. Woody's on the call with us, I think, today. That when you pay, Woody wasn't sure whether Steve Sheppard, this is a picture of Steve, when Steve had done a little bit of work for Woody and Michelle, and he wasn't sure if that was really, the bill was really warranted. And I said to Woody, if you have a really good lawyer, and I believe that Steve is a really, really, really good lawyer, that's an investment, not a cost. Think about that. If you have really good, and I bet you Aaron will back me up on this, if you have really good suppliers, trades, etc., and maybe, the only argument I've ever had, Aaron, with Dustin is he doesn't charge me enough. And every time he sends me a bill, I send him a little bit more than he asks for. It's like a tip, right? You tip a waiter or server, and because he's just such a nice person, he does such great work, and why not? And it's an investment, not a cost. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what I think. So in this case, I had an extraordinary experience with Steve about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And we're doing a little bit of a reorganization, a corporate reorganization. And I walk into Steve's office, and before I could say anything, he said, Bruce, I did a search of all the titles in Ontario. You did? Yeah. For anything with your name associated with it. And you're not going to believe this, you guys. He found that we own a 3,000 square foot lot in a good location that we'd forgotten about. I didn't ask him to do that. He just did it. I don't know why I'm not even sure why he did. He just did it, just see if there was anything else out there. And there was. I don't know. The lot's probably worth $600,000. So Woody, it's an investment, not a cost. All right.
I got it.
Okay, there you go. I kind of drilled that down. So I think I kind of beat that to death, but if you have a good team around you, boy, it's like having a comforter around you, in a cold winter night or something like that, cuddling up with your loved one or something like that. It really it's just an incredible thing. When I was trying to put the Sens deal together, I had I think 62 or 64 limited partners, businesses who invested in the Ottawa Centers the first time. And they just they were so supportive, and they were like goodwill ambassadors. They helped us sell more season tickets and more suites and get more sponsorship, and they were in the community all the time. And there was a tremendous love affair between the senators and the community, which went on for decades, and they were a big part of that. So that's enough for me, Eric. It's your turn.
I want to add one other thing. What I've been doing it for the last 20 years. When I was younger, what I would do is I would bake cookies with my daughters, and I would go deliver cookies to all of my suppliers, all of the people that worked with me. I since evolved that through the brewery. Every year I spend about $1,000, and I buy beer, and I take my kids with me, and I go and actually thank the suppliers. I go to their warehouses. I bring beer for the people that work there, that build the things that I need. I never accept gifts at Christmas, and people will offer a lot of gifts to when you're providing a lot of service for them. But I like to reverse the model. If you ever show up on my job sites, almost every Friday there'll be a barbecue, there'll be pizza. I think when you take care of people in unexpected ways, they take care of you. I really truly believe it, and I know it has had, like, throughout my life, I could reach on the phone and call anyone in an emergency, and I bet you I'd have 100 people show up. It makes a big difference.
And I can say that, you know, some of my American clients do not agree with me. All right. And I can't argue with them. They are cutthroat. If there's a supplier out there that is 1 or 2% cheaper, that's it. They go with him or her. So, you know, obviously I'm presenting to you guys what my philosophy is. There are people out there in Canada and the United States, but mainly in the States, who don't agree with it. And I just have to point that out. One last thing I'm going to say before we turn it over to you, Aaron, is I'm looking at the chat box. Something Aaron said there, I want to just underline. I think Karina said it too, that we get 40% of our outside investors from LinkedIn. That's what Aaron said. And Karina, who is an amazing developer, said LinkedIn is my best friend. So I can't remember, was it who said LinkedIn? I think it was you, Jordan. You said LinkedIn was important. Yeah, I hear you, and I might be reminded of that, and I might have to do more on LinkedIn. Thank you for that.
Can you see my screen okay, Bruce?
Beautiful. You want to put it on the, you want to do this?
Yep. I'm not sure if we talked about it, but the European model of taking leads and taking estimates is very interesting. So the American model is kind of our Canadian model. You go up, get 3 or 4 estimates. They typically take the cheapest one. The really interesting model that they use in a lot of Europe and Scandinavia is they'll take 4 quotes, they'll throw out the high, they'll throw out the low, and they'll settle in the middle. What that usually means to you is the high guy didn't want it, the low guy is probably taking it, they made a mistake, and the ones in the middle are going to be the ones that should be the closest to the end result. And it's a really interesting model. When you're taking pricing, I tend to not look at the lowest price, because there will be something that comes with that low price. Anyhow, I wanted to talk a little bit about building plans today, the differences in between commercial and residential, the things that I look at when I look at plans. And it doesn't mean this is the only way to look at them. All the plans are different. People have different processes. But this is the way, when I bring new people into my organization, we sit down and we go through this every time, so that when I look at it, and when Shani looks at it, and when Matt looks at it, we're all talking the same language, which is very, very important, in particular when you're referencing different components on a plan, so that we're all looking at it the same way. This is a set of plans. Actually, I think, Dustin, you might have drawn this for us. I just wanted to give you an example of what you're going to see on some plans. The building plans for residential builds are pretty interesting, in that the most important things that Dustin as a designer is looking at is layouts. Does it fit the lot sizes? Are the windows sized correctly to allow enough light into the different spaces if they're bedrooms, things like that. Some of the stuff they're not really looking at, and it's more cosmetic, is they just draw a simple kitchen, they draw simple bathrooms, they draw simple bedrooms. And as we go through this conversation, I just want to continually make people think about the stuff that isn't in the plans is very important. And I have a couple of ways that I deal with them that I think will make some sense. So the first thing I look at when I look at plans is I look at big picture stuff. I'm looking for space, storage, and flow. It's very common, as Bruce mentioned earlier, that people are designing for these like beautiful boxes and things that look aesthetically pleasing. What we're talking about today are rental units. Aesthetically pleasing is completely irrelevant, in my opinion. Everything has to be managed. Like, people will like the building and they should make it nice, but that flow, I've been in some buildings that don't have much storage. Those things are problems, and they are solvable at this conversation level, right? It's partly your responsibility as the owner to undertake these plans, look at them, identify some problems. Like, Dustin makes mistakes, like everyone does. And these are rectifiable in the early stages of these layouts. Kitchens, bathrooms, really interesting. They'll be drawn in as an idea. This is where your washer dryer goes. This is where your cabinets go. But they don't really give you measurements. They don't tell you if you should stack. They don't really lay out your mechanical, your electrical. That's your job. What I will tell you to do, forget about custom building. Right now, I want to just talk to you about building residential multifamily homes, rentals. What I would tell you to do is go down to your local hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, what used to be Rona, grab their simplified kitchen layout brochure. Every kitchen company makes the same size cabinetries, 18s, 24s, 30, 36s. Use standardized cabinets, get some green tape, lay it out in your own kitchen where you know you have the space, and lay out your kitchen for yourself. Never, ever use custom cabinets. They are not worth the money. If you use Home Depot sizes, you can go to Rona, you can go to Home Hardware, they all make the same sizes. So really pay attention to that. It's like a 10-minute exercise, and your wife will wonder why you're taping the floor, but it matters because then you can lay it out, make sure the sink, dishwasher are in the right spot. It's your responsibility to take care of this, or someone that you would hire to do this for you. Be a part of that discussion, and your layouts will make sense. Then you can go to Home Depot and just get a complete price. You can have all your kitchens priced at any time from about 15 different suppliers if you use standardized sizing. I always look at decks and outdoor spaces. Decks are multifaceted. They can be storage if they're covered. They can be barbecue. They can be seating areas. They can do a lot of things for you, and tenants love them. If you're doing decks, think about what the view is. Maybe look at doing a deck on a different side. If you're staring right into someone's backyard, it's probably not going to be a great deck. Skip it. A little bit later on, or another lesson, we'll talk a little bit about how they look at appraisals. We'll dive into appraisals, and one of the things that is not covered in a traditional appraisal is the cost of building decks. The sixplex, in the process of finishing right now, has about $120,000 of decking, material, labor, railings, the whole kit and caboodle. I didn't get one penny for it. So when you look at decks, keep in mind from a construction draw standpoint, they're a weird thing. And unless you build it into the front end of your draw, you're not going to get a lot of money for it. Lighting and electrical is really interesting. Same thing applies. They're not drawn on plans. They're drawn on commercial plans. They're not drawn on residential plans. When you have a floor plan, you can take the initiative. I only use pot lights. They're super inexpensive and they're really fast to do. You want to start going through and drawing circles to indicate where you would like your lighting to go. Otherwise, you'll be completely reliant on your electrical team to do that for you, and they will charge you a premium to do that. You can be part of it. You understand what you look in your own house. You have pot lights. Figure out how many lights you have in your room. It's not a hard thing to do. I put painter's tape on there. I use painter's tape in everything I do. It's the best way to understand how a space feels. It's the best way to understand the way the doors should swing, if they're in the right allocations, if you have space for hot water tanks. There is some really interesting software and people that'll come in and do some 3D mapping that will also act as a tool. Bruce was talking about photography. 3D mapping really allows you to sell, in particular, small spaces very well because people can see it from above, below, side, and you can spin it. It's a really amazing tool, and it's actually, the technology is not expensive anymore. It is not an expensive thing to do. And then the last thing, the subject matter expert piece, as you start to develop your team, to go back to Bruce's earlier point, this is where you funnel questions. This is part of their job, whether they have the contract or not. It's a simple thing. Hey, Bill, do you mind taking a quick look at this plan? I don't know why the panel is where it is. Can you help me figure out a good spot to put the panel? Or do you think we have enough power here? Like they'll be happy to help, especially if they're getting some ongoing business, and use that resource. They're the people that know what they're talking about. So we might have talked a bit about this before, but I always keep a master set. So my initial one will have my name all over it. It has do not touch, do not take. It belongs to me. I keep it. I keep all the sets, all the iterations that come out. I sign and date them, so I know that the first one is version 1, version 2, version 3. What that allows me to do is it allows me to see at how my thinking has changed on the project. And then I know at the end of it, if I go back to a guy like Dustin, I say, well, listen, this is why we made the changes. The next set of plans take A, B, and C into account. And the plans for him, when he does a redesign on the next project, if you're staying true to what you have, guess what? It just saved you some money. It's going to be cheaper because he has a baseline. What I do, I break everything down into sections. I'm a notebook guy. I've got them all over the place. I have different color orientations. So if you come to my office, you'd see like 150 highlighters. It's actually like almost a problem. But I use different colors to indicate what things I have to look at. So if I put red on a set of plans, it's because I don't know what it is. And when I look at it in red, I look back, I say, okay, now who do I send this to? How do I figure out what they're trying to tell me? Do I call back Dustin? Do I call the city? You know, do I call the electrician? I need to understand everything in red. So I use the traffic signal, red, orange, yellow. And then after that, I'll have different connotations. So if I have stuff with a black circle around it, it means I just have to pay attention to it. It's a way to keep yourself consistent. And if you have other members of your team and you're all doing it the same way, then when you're talking about certain sections, everyone can reference back to where you both are, and you're always talking the same thing. We've talked about the extra business here. Extras come about because of mistakes in the planning process. I really believe that you as the owner, me as the project manager, Bruce as the development manager, we all have a part to play in ensuring that there are as few extras as possible. There always will be some, but taking an active interest in your plans is key to this being successful. What I usually do, and Dustin can speak to this, is I'll go through them a bunch of times, I'll make notes, and then I'll schedule a time where Dustin and I can sit in the same room. In 1 hour, we've probably solved 15 problems because he can pull them up on the screen. I can walk to the screen and say, I don't know what this is. How do we fix this? And as opposed to like this crazy email back and forth, what do I do with that? I think sitting in the same room as some of the planners, man, you can fix a lot of problems. Couple of things that are really, really, really important. You will always have legends throughout your plans. Pay specific attention to your window and door legend. They are critical to a lot of subcontractors. To the supplier of windows and doors, obviously. Your framer needs them. Your siding contractor needs them. And in certain cases, some of the other subtrades will need them to know where they are in terms of which way the door opens, so that the electrician knows where to put the plug. What I do is I take the schedule, I blow it up, and I go into each house and I put them on the wall, and then right below where the window goes, I will write W1. So there's a reference point standing on the wall, and then they know that's a W1 window. You're going to do the same thing with your wall schedules, your ceiling schedules. You need to lead this horse to water. People are lazy. We take shortcuts. We make a mistake. In the end, if I frame in the wrong window size as a framer, I'll probably come back and fix it, but it's going to cost you money because your window guy is going to charge you more money. Your siding guy might have started. So this is active involvement in projects, and it really is super simple. It's photocopying, and I have black spray paint. I just sprayed the floor. So it makes it really, really easy. When you talk to your window installer for windows and doors, ask them what their rough opening requirement is, pass that off to your framer, pass it off in writing, and send it in an email. Make sure they know, because if you frame all your windows and doors wrong, it will obviously be a big problem. When you go into the wall schedules, I do the exact same thing on the wall schedules so that each wall will have a different connotation. It might have a radiant channel. It might be 2 layers of 5/8, might be 1 layer of 1/2 inch. It will apply to every sub in that place. Your plumber, your electrician, your framer, your drywall contractor. You show them what they need to know. You will limit the problems. Your electrical boxes will be at the right lengths. Your tub will be fitted in a spot where you can still put drywall over it. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in a build where it's like a cluster of you know what, because people haven't communicated, and this is the simplest stuff to communicate, like paint on the floor, schedule on the wall. Really, really simple. But one other thing I'll mention too, I think we've mentioned before, label every unit, A, B, C, D, put it on the door, put it on the floor, and then when you reference it back to your subs in unit A, go check schedule B, right? Like you do it like that so that you're all talking the same language. Don't say the top unit on the right-hand side. I've seen that get flipped around 3 times and it ends up being a disaster. Go ahead, Bruce.
Aaron, just to your point, we were installing internet in our building, and we wanted to put internet into 2 particular units. They weren't labeled properly. They were mislabeled, and the internet got installed at least in one of the apartments, but the other one was wrong. So we installed internet and a mesh system in the wrong apartment.
Yeah, and like I'm a simple guy. I think the simplest things never really fail. It's magic marker on the floor. A, B, C. Everyone understands it, and it's really everything's a reference in an email, a phone call, and a text. And spray paint's super cheap, and it comes off when you change the floor. Piece of cake. The other thing I like to do when it comes to windows and doors, it'll be one of your more expensive action items, and it's probably your longest lead item. I always send the quote to my window and door installer, whether it's my siding contractor or maybe it's just a window and door guy, and I have them sign off on each and every page with an initial, and they sign off that they're okay and they're happy with the window sizing. So these things show up and there's a problem. I like to pass on the responsibility. There'll still be a battle at the end, but at least I've set the tone correctly in the beginning and made them part of the process. Now, I don't know how much commercial people are doing, but I did want to point out a couple of like really holistic differences on the commercial side. Commercial plans are way more detailed. Not everyone can draw them. They almost always include your first 2, 3, 4 pages are always demolition plans. And one of the big action points that I want to point out is barrier-free and accessibility. The province of Ontario has a zero tolerance for messing around with this stuff. When you install, you can build, and I've built entire buildings, and I've had the inspector come in and he goes to one thing every single time. He goes to the barrier-free washroom, and that's the only spot he'll take out a tape measure and measure. The only spot, which is insane because, which is crazy because I could have rooms that are off by 15, 16 inches. He'll never even look at that. Barrier-free, do not mess around. Go ahead, Bruce.
Aaron, do you think Ontario is going to adopt zero-step entry for commercial buildings?
I was told, so we met with the head building inspector, and I was told that it is coming. So I think they're going to have a very hard time rolling it out retroactively, but it's coming. We have no choice.
Yeah, so one of the things that is happening in Alberta is even in residential buildings now, what they're doing is they're creating zero-step entry, even for residential buildings. And by that, zero-step means just what it sounds like, that if you're in a wheelchair, you can just roll into a building, even a house. And if you see the houses where they have, there's 2 or 3 steps sometimes more to get into a house. And if you have somebody who's in a wheelchair, they put in those, what do you call those things? They look like walkways, they zigzag up.
The ramps, you mean?
What's that?
Like the ramps?
Yeah, ramps. So you can see that you've got some houses that have these ugly ramps. They stigmatize your house. Like I really don't like ramps. But what they're doing in Alberta is they're creating these zero-step entry for homes as well as businesses that are done with landscaping. So it's very gradual. It just looks like, and it still keeps the snow and the water away from the front door, but it's beautifully done. So instead of having a stigmatized house, and if you think about it, if you're moving furniture in and out, if you have a baby and a baby carriage, you're carrying groceries in, zero-step makes a whole lot of sense, even if you're not in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm. There's some pretty interesting lifts now that work really well, and they're actually quite attractive. So on the residential side, we talked about it a bit, but I always look at the note sections. That's where I do my highlighting and my research. Fire separations are governed. They are designed according to the requirements of the province. It doesn't mean you can't do a better job. Some of the worst units I've been to, and not worst, but I actually, when I was in Denise's unit, Denise and Stewart's, they were unhappy with the way the noise was transferring up a wall. There are lots of easy and inexpensive ways to mitigate that. They make different types of caulking. The radiant channel piece works. Obviously, you guys all know Roxol, but there are other options that should be explored, and they are not overly expensive to implement. And you can do that up and beyond what the standard is, because quiet neighbors are happy neighbors. And that will save you tons of time and hassle down the road. And I think it also becomes something that you can sell in your pre-rental program. By the way, we went to the standard, and guess what? We went beyond the standard because we want to make sure you're happy and you don't hear the next door neighbor's baby crying at 3 a.m. So I love that kind of stuff. I kind of think I'm a little bit of a marketing guy, and I think that's something that's a sellable package. Exceed your standard wherever you can, wherever it's fiscally prudent, and I think that pays itself back. Outdoor spaces, Bruce and I have had this conversation a couple of times. I'm a big shed guy. What I usually do in my sheds, I take the leftover material and I build a shed with leftover material. So I kind of make that part of my eco messaging, and that becomes an auxiliary rental unit, whether that's for, maybe even I have to supply a lawnmower on site. I can use it for a bunch of different options. So I love beautiful landscaping. When I do my soft and hardscaping, I have a landscape designer I've been working with for many years, and she knows my mantra is very simple. Give me things that look pretty and I don't have to do anything for, right? There's so many things that get designed that take tons of effort, planting, watering, energy, that really you will never recuperate. Give people areas on their decks to do hanging baskets, let them take care of the baskets. Everything else on the hardscape and softscape, keep it simple, like really keep it simple. I love river rock. You know why? You don't have to cut river rock. So we did talk about window and door layouts is really important, in particular indoor interior doors. Make sure doors don't hit each other. Make sure they're not walking into vanities and bathrooms. When your interior framing is installed, do the same thing with the tape. Put your back to the frame of the door, left hand swing goes left hand, your right hand swing goes to the right hand. So you can start to decide where you want things to swing in and out, and it's simple and easy before you order your doors to figure that out. We talked about highlighters. It's the key to pulling your attention back to things that need attention, and on a set of plans, there's going to be at least 100 things you really have to look at. I always go through the plans with my subs, so we'll walk the space and then I'll sit down with them with the plans. I'll make them look at the highlighted sections and say, like, what are we doing about this? Does this sound right? Are there alternates that we can apply? The last sixplex I built, I found an alternate to Roxol and I saved like $6,000. And all it took was them to say, try this. I sent it to the city. I got the 2 thumbs up, and that became our insulation standard. I would not have considered that. This is their business. They sent it to me and it made a big deal. The collaboration piece, I put that in there. Get in their office, sit down with them, pull it up on a big screen, walk through section by section, hammer it out together. That collaboration starts in the beginning and it can continue on to the project, because you're going to continue to talk to them with little questions. An action list, define the things you have to figure out as soon as possible, put them into order. And then really, like, and Bruce talked about this a bit, like, and in some version of an admin assistant, project manager, the amount of paperwork that will be generated on these is astronomical. Everyone, like, I've seen everyone do this. They all keep the most important things. A set of plans, they'll have the building permits, they'll have the city inspections. And then if I ask, where's your shop drawing for your HVAC equipment? I have no idea. Let me try and find it. Keep a manual on site. We use Trello as a shared drive so that you can see all the different manuals. The organization piece will come back and benefit you every single day, because every day someone will ask something specific of you. And if you can pull it up quickly and get it to them, you save money. That's a guarantee. Communication, and I've probably talked about this at length, so has Bruce, but that integration between how you talk to the people that work for you, how you talk to the subcontractors, the suppliers, standardize it, document it, print emails, make sure the communication is dialed in, because you are the face of this entire build. You don't want to be the problem behind it. You want to be the reason it's successful. A couple of the miscellaneous notes. Storage, a mechanical room is not considered storage. I like that one, actually makes me crazy every time I see that. Interesting, you probably know this, but an electrical panel requires 1.3 meters in front of it and on both sides. You cannot put a hot water tank next to an electrical panel. So when you're looking at your mechanical room and trying to figure out that kind of stuff, electrical panels need a lot of space. It is not designed for storage at all. In the urban area, this is obvious, but bikes, the last thing you want to see is some guy lugging his bike up 3 stories, knocking people over, making marks on the walls. Some of these auxiliary sheds can be built into your initial design. They don't have to be fancy. They just need even a lockable bike rack. Garbage storage is often overlooked. The city typically has requirements on how, where, and why, but it's very important because garbage, it stinks and it can be in the way. Look at your inspectable items. So you are given, with your approved city permit, you're given a list of items that are inspectable by the city. ESA and TSSA, so in Ontario it's ESA, in other provinces it's called different stuff. So the electrical and gas are self-governing bodies. You still need an electrical permit even if you have a city permit. And TSSA, the gas regulator, is self-regulated. In other words, when the technician comes and installs your gas stove or hot water tank, they put their own tag on it and they take responsibility for the safety of that appliance. There is no further inspection from TSSA. ESA does well, and then the city is really important. City inspectors have a ton of power. They're not always right, but they should always be treated as they're right, and that conversation should always be friendly, because they can make your life like miserable, like absolutely miserable. They can be late, they can not show up, they can deduct things for stuff that isn't even within their realm. So I like my ceiling story. We were building a ceiling, the wall framing, it was supposed to be radiant channel, which is about 1/2 inch thick, and then 2 layers of 5-inch drywall. Well, the framer didn't pay attention. He ran the interior walls too close to the ceiling. So my drywall guy comes in, he's like, well, we got to tear down all the walls because I need this to be a continuous install. I called my city inspector. She came out and said, no, run it up to the wall, then do 5/8 on your interior walls and your fire separation is consistent. I'm happy with that. City of Rockland said yes. The city of Ottawa would have said no, but to tear that down would have probably cost me 2 weeks and somewhere around $10,000. Wow. Instead, I had it fixed that day. They can be an asset. They are part of their job is not only inspections, they will do partial inspections. So in other words, you have a 6-unit and you want to start on the basement and you need to have the installation framed, have them come look at the installation. They'll charge you for the inspection, but at least it allows you to continue to move forward. As much of a pain as they can be, they're not there to give you a hard time. They're there to make sure the building is built correctly, but they can help you. And it's the same thing. The head building inspector in Rockland, we come out here once a quarter and we have a beer and I'll buy her dinner. It can be a relationship piece too, and I can pick her brain when there's a problem. Like, can you just look at this? I'm not sure what to do about this. So they can definitely be your friend. That's an example of all the different stuff that you'd have to look at, right? So, and it kind of, it stages it out for you. Pay attention to it, blow it up, put it on the wall. Don't skip any steps. There's not that many of them. Don't skip them. If for whatever reason something happens and you're in an abundant rush to maybe get something finished, pictures are your absolute best friend. If there's something, you did a footing and you had to backfill, take 1,000,000 pictures, take a video. That is something that some inspectors will allow when they understand there's extenuating circumstances. There is no reason not to have 200, 300 pictures a day showing how you've built it, why you've built it. And that's all for me.
Oh, wow. That was fantastic. You did a lot in 26 or 27 minutes. That's really, really well done. So next week, guys, is our last build-up class. And I see Denise has got her hand up. Just give me a second, Denise. Oh, no, is it clapping? Okay, well, very nice. Next week, I'm going to do something that I don't think I've really ever done before. I'm going to show how one of my clients had 15 acres of really good agricultural land that he was renting out to a local farmer for about $100 per season per acre. So he's making about $1,500 and a year from his 15 acres. And that's pretty typical in Eastern Ontario. In California and some of the better spots, you'd make a bit more money, but not a lot. So I'm going to walk you through a model that could change that from $1,500 a year to over $170,000 a year from 15 acres of agricultural land. So it's a little bit outside the scope of the course, but I just thought it's a really neat model. And I'm going to invite somebody from Farm Credit Corp to come, if she will, and talk to us about what Farm Credit Corp can do. Is Sean still on the call here? I don't know if he is. Got to look around, see if he's still here. Yeah, there he is. Staring me right in the face. So Sean, that'll be particularly interesting, I think, to you and maybe to Aaron and some others here. If you have some agricultural land or places where you can grow things, it's a really cool model, and I'll work through that. And then Aaron has invited somebody from the city of Rockland, and I have to tell you, the city of Rockland is like, I think Aaron and his business partner Brad Cartier are like the co-mayors of Rockland now. So Aaron, can you tell us who's coming next week and what they're going to talk about?
Yeah, so I sat down yesterday with the city management team, the mayor, the head of economic development, and a few other people. We were discussing 5 or 6 different things, and I'd been kind of going back and forth with them, jumping on this course. And I said, you know what, step on the course. So the head of economic development for Rockland will jump on the call next week. We're going to talk between the two of us a little bit about that PPP, that public-private partnership. I think there's a lot to offer. These secondary and tertiary markets, they have a lot to offer. There's a lot of opportunity. They're looking for your business. I can tell you that right now. They just don't know who you are, but they're looking for your business. They're willing to work with you in ways that you will just not see serviced in major markets. And I'm pretty excited that they're willing to do this and to kind of jump on and talk a little bit about the ways that you can reach the right people, who the decision makers are, who the power behind the throne, so to speak. It's a really interesting way to move forward on some of this development.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And I'll have a few questions for him if nobody else does. All right. Did you have a question, Dale?
Sure. Do I have time for a question?
You bet.
Okay, great. So awesome. Best practices, Aaron. So I think one of the things that I'm curious about is that, you know, you're wearing your contractor's hat on, maybe a GC hat in this. And so we're looking at these best practices through that lens. So now putting on my owner's hat, you know, I'm hiring, you know, ideally you, Aaron, but if not you, somebody else, to manage the construction. You know, obviously, I would love to see them utilize these best practices in the construction. You know, where do you find that balance? You know, how do you, you know, I'm anticipating that, you know, not every contractor wants to be micromanaged by the owner, and they don't want sort of this sort of tell them how to do their job sort of perspective. But at the same time, you know, if you're seeing that, oh, you know, I'm not seeing any pictures, or, you know, their organization is a little questionable, and, you know, they're not, you know, they're not maybe making use of some of these really good ideas, you know, how do you recommend sort of working with that?
So I guess one of my main sayings is, if it smells like a turd and looks like a turd, it's not a chocolate bar. So when I start to go down an avenue with someone that I don't particularly like or respect, I tend to end that avenue pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. I always try and set the tone at the beginning, expectations. When he shows up and everything's already highlighted, I like to look at how we can communicate. It doesn't always work because not everyone is of the same ilk and the same mindset. But that front end meeting, that first 2 or 3 meetings, it is the most important time, because you're setting the tone not just for what it'll be like to work together, but your expectation levels. This is going to be a marriage. I know about your project. You're 2 years into your next project. So this is something that you have to be able to work with that person. You have to be able to communicate with them. And if those first couple meetings, you don't feel like they're going to listen to you, it's not the right person. It just isn't. And it's unfortunate, because sometimes they come as a referral, and you feel like this is, you know, you have to move ahead. Don't move ahead unless you're comfortable. It's, you know, there's people on this call that I've talked to that I know that's been a problem, and it will be a problem again. It's your project. You're paying their bills. They may not like it, but it's your tone. And it's very important that you guys, I mean, you can't tell them exactly how to work, but you can lay out the groundwork for what is expected of their work.
Right. Okay.
We have one last question, and Dale, you should reach out to Aaron offline and make sure that you got the right team around you. I mean, the one message that I learned over many years is that's important. And Denise, the steward, you can tell me in your own experience, you know, if you have the wrong people involved, whether they're partners or contractors, lenders even, that make sure your life miserable. Dustin asks this. Is there a checklist that you have, Aaron, when you're trying to qualify a company, a contractor, a supplier, a trade, a sub-trade? Do you have like a checklist?
Yeah, so I do. It's not formalized. It's mostly in my head. It does start out with me with the relationship piece. Everyone knows my beer story. If I don't have a beer with you, I won't work with you. So I start out from a very simplistic messaging point. I've done the avenue of referrals, but people don't give you bad referrals. That's just a fact. I often will go to suppliers that I know they work with and find out from the supplier what kind of guy is he. Is he the kind of guy that shows up yelling because something's missing? There's always someone that'll be honest with you. There always is. If you do get referrals, go to the next door neighbor of the house they built. Talk to the neighbors. Were they dirty? Were they on time? Did they leave a mess? The neighbors will be honest. The referrals, they're paid. Like, you know, I'm not going to give you a referral to someone that's terrible, right? So I often go to sources where I know they have no vested interest. They typically will be honest and open, and neighbors are a wealth of information. If I have time next week, I'll talk about how I do home inspections. Go to the neighbors. They will always give you the juicy gossip, and that's sometimes the difference between yes and no.
I like that, Aaron. And Dustin, what I often do is I check both sides. I talk to people who are suppliers to them, and I talk to their clients. Right. So if you have somebody who's, I don't know, a plumber, you obviously can talk to, you know, clients that he or she they've worked with, and you can also talk to people who have worked with them who are in the trades as well. And once you do this 360 on them, you'll have a pretty good idea if they're reliable and trustworthy. All right,
people like Dustin too, engineers, drafters, they'll know who the good ones are.
Denise has a recommendation for owners is to take a course similar to this to know a bit more about what should be happening. Prepares them better. Thank you, Denise. That's very nice to say. All right. Listen, everybody, thank you again for coming today. One last class next week. And, you know, obviously you can reach out to Aaron or me by email anytime after the class is over. We'll do our best to get back to you and help you and help ourselves too. See you all.